and you have the com.
Okay, so I'm trusting everybody's here for the Burlington Wine Club. Okay, and I go through this each time, but just in case there's anybody new, we are recording the session. If you don't want to be recorded, turn off your video. That's up to you. Ask questions if you want. So everybody's going to be muted while we go through the presentation, but you can type a question in the chat box, and Marilyn is our co-host and she's going to be monitoring the chat box. And if there's a lull in things or if there's a buildup of questions, then we'll stop things and answer the questions. There are two different modes, the speaker mode and the gallery mode. Be aware of that. So if you want to see just the speakers and the folks on the side, then go that way. If you want the gallery mode, you'll see everybody at the same time. So it's up to you. Okay, so welcome to the Burlington Wine Club. New members, you know what? I'm absolutely thrilled. Like, this is awesome that 2 months in a row, we've actually had brand new members. Aaron and Bob, welcome. It's awesome to have you. Dana, especially now that I can pronounce your name, and Sue. So welcome. I'm so glad you guys are joining us. We've also had 3 birthdays this week. Chef Mike's birthday was earlier, Bob Wong's birthday, and Mia's birthday is today. So happy birthday to these folks. Like, cheers.
Thank you.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday. Okay, some recent events. So Michael German from Trajectory Beverages was here last month, and we had some international wines. We also had, as you know, Trajectory Beverages provides wines for the trains and the planes. And of course, the trains haven't been running. So they provided an awesome deal to us whereby we could get 12 mini bottles of Chardonnay and another case for free for $60. So just to let you know, we sold 60 cases of their wines. I'm probably going to do one more order if anybody wants some. It's kind of 2 for 1. With the caveat that there's an expiry date on these wines that's like a couple of months out. But if anybody can't drink, I don't know, 12 little bottles of wine in a couple of months. Anyway, so we've sold about 60 bottles of their wine, but they still have a few left. So if you want some, just let me know. April 10th, we had the Spring Fling with Chef Maggie. And I think that was a big hit for those that attended. Lobster or mushroom stuffed Cornish hen, one of the richest dishes I've had in a while. And coming up, so we were planning to have the tacos and tequila with Chef Mike on May 16th, but of course we're in lockdown, we're in stay-at-home mode, so we can't do any kind of live event. So we're going to postpone it, and I'm tentatively thinking the Sunday in the middle of June, June 13th, but of course it depends on what's going on here. And the thing about that event, a first live event, it'll be a small number of people. The folks that have been attending virtually will get first dibs. It won't get advertised to anybody else before you guys get an opportunity. And again, it will depend on whether or not, like, what's happening. Okay. May 28th, Carlo Estates, plant-based, gourmet plant-based food. So that's going to be an interesting, that's going to be a regular Burlington Wine Club event, end of next month. And Dale, who is one of our members and a vegan, and Monique, who has been a past member, is also a plant-based person. They're going to help us define what I hope to be a really awesome gourmet meal of plant-based food. The other thing is, So I'm looking at other ideas. So as you know, we've had the Burlington Wine Club at the end of the month, and then we've had another event kind of mid-month on the Saturday night, which 3/4 of the people attend. And because we don't have the tacos and tequila night, we don't have something scheduled for May. But I have a couple of ideas, and I want your feedback, either through the chat, or I'll ask you via email after this. One is charcuterie boards. I attended a charcuterie board class. It was like $15. It's Zoom, and it's how to put together an awesome charcuterie board. You have the option of buying a board or not. Anyway, it was kind of fun, and I thought people might enjoy it. So that's one option. A restaurant dinner. So that's one thing that we haven't done, is had a dinner provided by a restaurant and some recommended wines. And of course, we've had a couple of chef dinners, and we can do that again. So those are three kind of ideas. And if you have other ideas, I'm really open to suggestions. Okay. So we don't have anything booked for May because the tacos and tequilas is canceled. If you want something for May, we'll pull it together. Just let me know. And tonight, of course, Creekside Estate Winery, Nancy and Yvonne. Nancy Kennedy has been here with us before, so we welcome her back. And Yvonne is the assistant winemaker at Creekside Estate Winery. So it's awesome that she's here with us tonight. It's always great to have a winemaker. And actually, for some reason, I don't have the sparkling wine on the menu, but Yvonne and or Nancy, I'll ask you to talk to that first, and then we'll talk to the first flight of wines.
Okay,
So,
can I start
absolutely.
by talking about Creekside a little bit first?
Sure.
And I'll make it really quick so Yvonne can jump in with the Twinkle that you've just had. So a little bit about Creekside. Creekside has been doing its VQA premium thing in Niagara since 1997, beginning with a small winery with 11 acres and building up to on-site to about 14, 15 acres. Over the years, this determined little winery expanded its vineyards to include premium red growing site on the Queenston Road Vineyard, located in St. David's Bench, where a couple of years ago we opened up a sister winery called Queenston Mile. So that's our other property, and encourage you to visit both. Creekside's in Jordan and Queenston Mile is in St. David's. Directly across from Chateau des Charmes. You can't miss that building. So if you were looking out their window, you'd be looking at us, just to give you a perspective. Anyway, the Creekside team decided early on to make the atypical for Niagara, grape varieties of Sauvignon Blanc and Syrah, which were pretty much unheard of in Niagara, let alone Canada. So the winery is a bastion for inspired experimentation with a winemaking team that delights in defying Niagara winemaking conventions. The winery mantra, make great wine and never stop experimenting. Creekside's all about fun and enjoyment of wine and taking ourselves less seriously. And the only thing really we take seriously is our winemaking. And we're so lucky to have Yvonne here tonight. It's always a pleasure to have an actual winemaker who knows these wines inside and out. So the last thing I just wanted to say about Creekside being in Jordan, Ontario, the winery continues to be a pioneer in the industry. We follow our own path and have heaps of fun along the way. Visitors to Creekside can enjoy an approachable, honest, and friendly atmosphere, serving up samples of deliciously locally grown wines. So I just want to give a little bio on Yvonne before she talks about and introduces the wine. Yvonne, we are so blessed to have Yvonne on our team. Yvonne got started in the wine industry in 2006, working in retail at various wineries and immersing herself in the Ontario wine scene to gain more knowledge. Her previous studies included biotechnology and business, human resources, before she started the Niagara College Wine Technician Program in 2006. She completed her co-op portion of her course at Creekside, and she's never left us. Yvonne grew her career here, starting as a cellar tech up to her current position as assistant winemaker, as well as winemaker for certain brands under the Creekside umbrella, Red Tractor, and product lines, particularly Chardonnay. She's our Chardonnay maker. She's also headed up our cider making for Root Apple after completing a cider certificate course at Brock University. Two-time winner of the Golden Blunnies, for those of you who know Bloodstones. Everybody in the wine industry, especially in production, wears them. Golden Blunnies trophy for the barrel rolling competition in the 20 Valley. It's usually during the Ice Wine Festival. She's still the only woman to win this. She even did a competition at 7 months pregnant. She may be small, but she's mighty. Her life is busy with 2 little kids at home, but she continues to be innovative with the wines at Creekside and lends her fun personality to everything she does. So I'll just turn that over to Evie and let her talk about the Twinkle to start.
Welcome,
Thanks.
Yvonne. Lovely.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Nancy. That was really nice. Yeah, actually today is my 14-year anniversary of being hired at Creekside. I just realized that this morning. So that's kind of fun and crazy that I've been there that long. So the wine that we're first tasting is the Twinkle. This is the bottle here. It's described a lot as a sparkling wine. It's technically an effervescent wine. So it's got some bubbles to it, but it's also not as bubbly as you would get from a proper sort of champagne or even a Charmat, really. But the process of making it is similar. So what we did with this is Riesling, and it's actually all from our vineyard at Creekside Estate Winery, fairly new young vines. And we fermented it in stainless steel, really cool temperatures. And with Riesling, like, you just kind of leave it alone, like let it speak for itself, let it really come through. And as a winemaker, it's one of the varieties that I would say you kind of just stand back and let it do its thing. To make it effervescent, what we did is we finished the ferment in a Charmat tank. So normally when you would do a Charmat or a traditional sparkling wine, you would add sugar and yeast after a little bit of aging time maybe. And so that's going to boost the alcohol again. What we wanted to make with this is something a little bit lighter. So we didn't add any sugar. It was just that we put it in a tank before it finished ferment. And that way we could capture those bubbles at the time, and then filtered straight to bottle. So it's just a little bit lighter than a regular sparkling wine, but it's really refreshing, and it's fairly low alcohol. I think it's like 9.7% or something like that. So it's nice for the summer, you know, when you're having afternoon drinks and you don't want to, you know, hit something too hard. It's nice and light and perfect for that sort of
Day
thing.
drinking?
Yeah. Yes, it's the perfect day drinking wine.
Day drinking, which is a new pandemic term.
Which I was going to say, which
Yes.
never happens at this time.
Yes. And with the conversations earlier, this would be a wonderful park wine. Not that I'm encouraging park drinking. I never said that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's got a little bit of residual sugar too, because we left enough that we could do the ferment, but also leave a little bit just to add a little bit of fun to it. It's not meant to be a super serious wine. It's really meant to be a fun sparkling summer wine. The Twinkle is a new product for us relatively. We did it for the first time last year, and last year we did it with Pinot Grigio, which was fun too. But it's a great wine. Like if you are ever looking at making like wine cocktails and that sort of thing, it's a good wine to do those sorts of things with. You could make a mimosa with it. it's really just meant to be fun and, just enjoy, Riesling has such fresh, vibrant, fun flavors to it. Lots of green apple and lime zest, and it's just a refreshing wine. It's nice.
It's great.
And good, goes well with all our salty foods.
Yes. Yeah.
Salty,
Riesling's one of the
savory,
wines that you can pair with
pastries.
almost anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so cheers again
Cheers.
with the Twinkle.
Cheers, everybody.
Okay.
So Yvonne, beyond the fact of the convenience of having the screw top, what was the decision behind this Twinkle being done under a screw top? It's quite unusual for a effervescent or sparkling.
Yeah, I think it's difficult to do a proper sparkling under a screw cap because of the pressure. And even this is like just sort of at the top boundaries of what a screw cap can handle, but we've had no issues with it. And basically, I think it just comes back to it being trying to be a fun and simple wine. And I don't mean simple that it's not very good. I just mean simple in that, we just don't take it too seriously. It's meant to be drunk when you're having, oh gosh, it's COVID. But if you were to have friends over and, you want something to pair
Easy
with
to
some
grab, easy to open.
appetizers. Yeah, and just having those little bubbles too, I find is kind of a mood lifter. So I think the screw cap goes along with that. Plus, it really does help sort of preserve that freshness, which is really what this wine is about, what we're trying to achieve here. And we could have done a crown cap. Generally, that ends up with a heavier bottle though too. And if you look at sort of sustainability choices in winemaking, having heavier glass and, that it is not so great for the environment when you don't have to do it. Obviously, there's times when you do have to do it. But because there's not as much pressure as a regular sparkling wine, you're able to put it into a fairly lightweight bottle and do the screw cap and kind of keep it environmentally friendly and easy for shipping too. Because right now, that's the majority of the way that our wines are getting out is being shipped to people's houses or to the LCBO.
Okay. Any comments on the Twinkle for anybody that's drinking it?
Yes,
I think
and,
a whole bunch of
and
you have it.
Carl, Anne and Carl say it reminds them of times in Portugal, Vin Verde.
Verde? Yep, because it has that effervescence, right?
Yeah, and actually, for me anyways, there's some inspiration from that. For me, it was, we had gone to Spain years ago and drank Chocolina, which it kind of reminds me like of a young Pinot Grigio. And it's basically, that's all it is a young wine that's bottled sort of at the end of ferment. And it doesn't really have a sparklingness to it, not as much as this, but it has an effervescence to it and has some carbon dioxide still in the wine. And it's just this fresh, fun wine. We would go out and have tapas and kind of like bar hop, and every single bar had this. And it was, we were there at the right time for it too, because it was kind of fresh and in season. And so that was, for me, a little bit of the inspiration behind making this wine, certainly when we started with it last year. And that's kind of the style that we're looking for, is just, getting out a young wine that's going to like have that freshness to it, because that's really what it's all about. And then I think we kind of hope that we just sell out of it every year and make a new one each year. And who knows like what this turns into for next year, because last year we did Pinot Grigio, this year we did Riesling. But I kind of like that we get to decide that year to year and get a feel for what we want to do with it.
Yeah, lots of support. People are loving it. Thank you for sharing it with us.
I'm glad everyone's enjoying this. I really love this wine.
Okay. So we have some white wines as well.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so 2019 Pinot Grigio. I'll pour that first.
And everybody should have had that in their kits. It's one of the small bottles, right? It wasn't labeled, but you would have had it in your kits.
So to me, this is another fun wine too, and quite a popular wine that we do. I think you'll notice too, it might be hard to notice in the glass, but if you see the bottle, like it has a little bit of color to it, which is just the Pinot Grigio grape, right? It's related to Pinot Noir. It's essentially just a mutation. So it has a little bit of color to it compared to other white grapes, almost like, well, the gris from the name sort of comes from that like gray pinky color that it has. And so if you were to do some skin maceration, you can actually get some color from it. But it's a nice wine, again, for this time of year, because it's got really fresh, sort of vibrant fruit to it, like that more tree fruit than some of the other wines that we do. So like apple, pear, nectarine kind of flavors. And it's another wine that, you know, you bring it in and kind of stand back and do your best to coax it into a style. I mean, it is a grape that you can play with a little bit. There's different winemaking techniques that you can do with it, I'd say, compared to Riesling, but it kind of speaks for itself. It's usually the first, aside from sparkling, it's the first grape that we bring in, and it kind of gets the ball rolling for harvest. You know, like things are ready to go when you start bringing the Grigio in. And if you've ever seen Pinot Grigio clusters, we refer to them, and Pinot Noir too, as like little tiny hand grenades, because they are so small and compact, and the berries are like very tight together, which is a love-hate thing when it comes to winemakers, because if it rains, you know, if it just gets to that point, those berries start to explode. And so you really have to watch it at harvest time, because as soon as stuff like that starts to happen, that's when things like sour rot and stuff can happen in the vineyard. So, you know, we're constantly watching the weather forecast, being like, okay, is it going to make it through this rain or is it not? So you might pick, before you see a rain front coming, you might take your chances and say, oh, you know, I think it'll be okay, it can ripen a little bit more. And, you know, sometimes it's like okay, this is being harvested today, and next thing you know, you have 16 tons of Pinot Grigio on your crush pad. So it really gets the vibe going for harvest, because it has you on your toes from the beginning. But it makes such a lovely wine, and something that's quite ageable, quite drinkable. And I think even like just the average wine drinker seems to really enjoy this, because, you know, it's not too complicated. It's very food friendly. It pairs really well with lots of different foods, and it's fresh and it's fun. That's kind of what we're going for with this. And you get a little bit of color from it, but we don't really do any extended skin contact. That's just how it comes out. And there's some, you know, in like larger winemaking, you can actually fine your wines to take that color out. But when you add stuff like that to wines, it does strip other things and other flavors from it. So we like to, in our winemaking, we're pretty low intervention. We like to just kind of leave things alone and let them be, and hope that our consumers appreciate that.
So the food pairing with this is just a simple cucumber salad with a dressing, but the dressing has some soy, some ginger, some garlic in it. And to me, that went to, when I tasted it, the fact that it is a food wine. It does have some substance to it. It's not just a light, airy drink in the afternoon wine. It's got some body to it. In fact, I might even ask why you called it Pinot Grigio vis-a-vis Pinot Gris.
I totally get your point, and I agree it has a little bit more body to it. And sometimes my little secret that I like to do with it is to mix the leaves throughout the wine sometimes. And so that's basically the spent yeast cells that fall to the bottom of the tank after fermentation. And throughout fermentation, there's a little bit of that too. But it adds a little bit of like body, like you said, it adds a little bit of nuttiness, and we don't do a ton of it because we don't want it to overtake the fruit, but we like the texture that it brings to the wine. So that's kind of been our style over the years. And vintage to vintage, I'd say it varies on how much we do that because we kind of like to see what we get. But we do that for part of our winemaking for that specific reason, because it does add body, which makes it more food friendly and gives it a little bit more substance. And I really enjoy that texture. It's texture to me, and I'll probably talk about it more too with the Sauvignon Blanc and Semillon, but like everyone focuses on flavors and aromas of wine, but texture is so important. And it's also like one of the really neat things about wine that I really enjoy. So it's one of the things that I personally really focus on with our wines. And I like to do different techniques with different wines to try and bring that out more.
Awesome. And I certainly appreciated it when I was tasting it. And it's reflected in the food pairing that I chose, which would be a little bit heavier than some other Pinot Grigios that you might taste. So I'm really curious. People go to the chat box, like the comments on the Pinot Grigio, comments on the food pairing with the Pinot Grigio. Did it work? Did we go way off base? I figured it had some body. Anyway, so over the next
It sounds
while,
like it would be fantastic, especially too, like, you know, there would be some saltiness from the soy and a little bit of spiciness. Like, I feel like that would really be a nice juxtaposition against the Pinot Grigio.
I'm hoping.
Well, I can tell you, Yvonne, you've acquired a fan. I won't name. Oh, well, she's probably put it in the chat. Don't like Pinot Grigio, but this one is good. That would be.
I saw that.
And
that's awesome.
And I think that we should probably move on to the next one, just in terms of timing. But I just wanted to mention that Beth and Martin, always leading us to think in new ways, had the Pinot Grigio with a brie. So just, you know, that matching or contrast. But certainly thank you for those who say thank you for the pairing. People are asking for the soy vinaigrette recipe. The website, Teresa, you want to speak to that as being updated with recipes?
Yeah. We're working on it, but we're very close now.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay. So the second wine, and like, so I have to say it's unusual in Ontario to find a Sauvignon Blanc Semillon blend.
Yeah.
Or a white meritage, as some people call it. But anyway, so I'm super excited about this wine. Talk to us, Yvonne.
We're constantly pushing the boundaries on what we can do in Ontario. I'd say that's kind of our game at Creekside. Rob Power, our head winemaker, has one of his favorite wines is a Bordeaux white. And so he has, over the years, constantly tried to recreate this. And, you know, we used to have Laura's white, which was kind of, you know, his inspiration initially to do that. And I said, no, it's not the same. It was a really good wine. It was just like, this is never going to be a Bordeaux Blanc because it doesn't have that Semillon component. And it, like Pinot Gris does not get to sub in for that. So I was like, just think of this as a different wine. But he didn't give up, and he went to one of our longtime growers and said, I want you to plant some Semillon for us. And this was right at the time when there was a lot of growers in Niagara that had tried to grow Semillon and were ripping it out because it's fairly winter sensitive. It otherwise does fairly well, but it has a tough time surviving winters. And so the grower said, semi what? What's it called? And so Rob gave him all the information. He's like, all right, I'll look into it. And then he's like, yeah, sure, I'll give it a shot. Really awesome guy. In fact, he's the Grape King 2 years in a row now because of COVID, but a fantastic grower, John Fedorko. And so he planted it for us, and it's actually done really, really well on his site. He's kind of in like the Fourmile Creek appellation, Virgil area, if you're familiar with like Niagara on the Lake. And the only thing you have to watch with it is that it does tend to overprop, and you have to make sure that you crop it enough to get proper ripeness in it. And it does take a little bit longer than some whites, but not too long either. So it's nice. So this is Sauvignon Blanc and Semillon blend. We ferment these batches separately at harvest, and it's all done in French oak barrels, a combination of new and old. And what we do is after usually about 9 months of aging, we taste all of the barrels, and we taste them blind so that there's no bias or anything like that. And vintage to vintage, it changes. Some years it's been Semillon dominant. Other years it's been Sauvignon Blanc dominant. The cool thing about this wine is that Sauvignon Blanc brings this sort of heightened tropical, nice fruit, and lifted spice from the oak barrels. And Semillon, if you were to taste it on its own, it doesn't have a lot of flavor. It doesn't have a lot of aromas. It's really all about the texture. And in particular, it's kind of, I would describe it as like a beeswax texture. And so when you combine a very aromatic grape like Sauvignon Blanc with sort of a softer grape like Semillon, but has this texture, they play really well together. And it's a really cool blend for us to make. We get excited about doing this every year. And so this year it's, this is 2017, it's Sauvignon Blanc dominant. So it's, I think 65% Sauvignon Blanc, 35% Semillon, again, all in French oak. And I mean, you can taste it has a lot more body than the Pinot Grigio because of that, you know, because of the oak aging and oak fermentation, no malolactic fermentation. So all the texture that you're getting in this is from basically the Semillon from the barrel ferment, which is really cool. And fabulous food wine, and something that you can cellar as well.
So, and speaking of food wine, so again, like I would never have done the crab cakes with the roasted red pepper remoulade if it was pure Sauvignon Blanc. It had to have the Semillon with it. And again, it's the texture, it's the warmth, it's the mouthfeel, it's only that works with like a more robust food pairing. So anyway, again, let us know. But I actually really like this Sauvignon Blanc Semillon. I thought it was a really good balance. Nice and again, good food wine.
So can I throw in some marketing and sales here?
Sure.
Because it's a really delicious wine, and it was my go-to wine for the last 2 summers. It's so incredible. You know, it kind of tames the zippiness of the Sauvignon Blanc by ramping up the fruit, but it also won back-to-back Lieutenant Governor's Awards, which are 300 Ontario wines, and they only picked 9, and they picked ours 2 years in a row, and we won. This is a beautiful wine.
Yep, I'm not surprised, and I had not had this before, and I just thought, okay, this is a great food wine. Something
different and unique.
Yep.
You know, besides Chardonnay and Pinot Grigio and the everyday, it's just
somewhere in between.
It's lovely. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, and you know what? I'm going to be like, along with Marilyn. The next wine, please. But add your comments to the chat. Add your comments to the chat box. What you liked, didn't, what worked, what didn't work, and any questions that you have of Yvonne before she goes. Okay, so we got the 2020 Rosé and the strawberry glazed carrots.
This sounds like an awesome pairing.
Darn.
Yeah, I'm totally jealous.
Yeah, you guys should have picked up a package.
I know.
It's too bad you were too far away.
Yeah, I was racking barrels today. So we did a new label for this. It's probably kind of hard to see in this light, but anyways, this is going to vintages, or is in vintages. This is why I have a salesperson, because I'm just the winemaker and I don't know all about the sales, but it's made to be a nice, light, refreshing rosé, and it's done primarily with Pinot Noir grapes and a little bit of Pinot Grigio. And it's more or less gone straight to press, maybe a couple hours of skin contact, but nothing major, because we really wanted to make a lighter colored rosé. You know, we've made different styles of rosé throughout our history at Creekside, and we've done more of the Sanier method. We've done longer skin contact. And while you can get more fruit and you can get better color, so you also get more tannins. So we're trying to find a balance with this and make something really nice and light and refreshing. And I don't know about you, but rosé is one of my favorite wines. I don't think there is rosé season. Like, to me, it's year round, but I always get excited this time of year because all the wineries are releasing their latest vintage and it's all coming out and it's super fresh. And again, you know, it's not a wine that you have to think a ton about. You just have to enjoy it. And rosé is a fantastic food wine. Personally, I love, like, for rosé, my summertime go-to is like get a charcuterie board, get some cheeses, some meats, some canned. There's a really great shop near us that has really like premium canned fish. And we'll get that and some olives and just sit outside in the backyard and enjoy. Like, that's to me what it's all about. It's not meant to be anything complicated, but it's just, I don't know, you can't drink rosé and not be happy, I think. Like, and if there's any time that we needed some happiness, is now. But it's, you know, nice, fresh sort of red berry fruits from the Pinot Noir. And Pinot Noir also adds a lot of body to the wine as well. And the Grigio, I think, just adds to the complexity because it brings in more of the tree fruits and more apples and nectarines and keeps it on that like light and refreshing side and not too heavy. And also lower alcohol, because generally speaking, if you're picking your Pinot Noir, I like to make rosé with ripe grapes. To me, rosé can go wrong as if you're picking red grapes that aren't ripe to make rosé. It shows in the wine because it's not phenolically ripe. And so when you pick Pinot Noir to ripeness, it's going to give you more alcohol than Pinot Grigio will give you to ripeness. So it was kind of a nice way to like mix the two to create something light and refreshing and happy.
When I first knew that there was going to be rosé, so I did a first cut at the food pairings just based on what I know about the wines. So I had some ideas about Pinot Grigio, I had some ideas about Sauvignon Blanc, Semillon, and had some ideas about rosé. And so the rosé, I thought, oh, I'm going to do a robust grilled vegetables on the barbecue. And then I tasted the rosé and I went, oh my goodness, this just smacks of strawberry. This is like, it's just the strawberry just hit me big time. And I went, okay, so I still want some depth. I still want some vegetables. I still want some body here, but I need some strawberries in here. So I literally searched for a recipe that included strawberries and vegetables and whatever. And Lorraine made it for us. So I hope it works. It was a complete about face for me after tasting the wine. So it's interesting, you know, you have some preconceived notions about wines before you taste them. And then,
Right. Anyway,
so Lorraine made it. It was different than what I originally thought of. The rosé is awesome, but it just smacked of fruit and light and strawberry for me. So
yeah, the fruit in this wine is just bursting and juicy, isn't it?
Yeah. So
I'm going to challenge you, Yvonne, on your notion that you're just a winemaker and not a marketing person. I think you can't drink rosé and not be happy is my new words to live by. So I should go on the website somewhere. Just refresh us again. You said it, but a few people have missed the grapes that are in the rosé, please.
It's predominantly Pinot Noir with a little bit of Pinot Grigio.
Thank you.
Yeah. And thank you. I'm gonna go back to Creekside and be like, I think I need a raise and some new responsibilities.
That's right.
You do too.
anyway, so
Yes.
put your comments in the comment chat, but we'll go on to the reds if that's okay with you guys. Ready for that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's go.
So the Gamay.
Gamay. Oh, I love this Gamay.
I do too. I was actually really impressed with this Gamay.
Yeah.
But I digress.
It's not
Yvonne,
your
to
everyday
you.
Gamay.
Yep.
No.
And I didn't know how to advise people, Yvonne, about in terms of the temperature that it should be served at. So maybe you could speak to that. It was in their kits, so you know maybe.
Yeah, I was going to talk about that throughout this too. So I'll mention that for sure. So Gamay is not something that we normally make, but we happen to have access to some Gamay from another vineyard in 2017, and we're like, hey, let's do this. Let's play with it. And I guess the style that we're aiming for is, you know, Gamay is a lighter red variety, but it also has a fair bit of complexity to it. And it can go in a variety of directions in how you're making it. So we definitely wanted it to have, you know, that vibrant red fruit. It also brings spice to it usually in terms of like white pepper. But we aged this in French oak barrels as well. So that also adds a little bit of spice, a little bit of structure to it. So it's a bit heavier than just a fresh light Gamay. It's meant to age. It's meant to, you know, stand the test of time for a little bit. What I love about Gamay is that it really goes through the seasons well, you know, in the fall, because it's got that savory edge to it. You're like, oh yeah, you know, I can eat this with meat pies and, you know, heavier sort of meat-based dishes, or even I eat a lot of plant-based food too. So like mushroom and earthy sort of things as well. Great with that. But the thing I love about it is like on a hot summer day, chill this down and it's so refreshing. It becomes almost a different wine. And that's my preferred way to serve it is just slightly chilled, like put it in the fridge and then take it out and let it sit on your counter for a little bit. As opposed to some other red wines, you know, that we tend to serve a little bit warmer. Gamay is really nice chilled and it becomes more of a refreshing drink, especially I find in the summer, you know, on a hot day, sometimes it's hard to want to get into red wine because it just doesn't feel right. You know, it feels too heavy, and Gamay is like the wine to be there for that. And that's what I really like about this wine is that, you know, it kind of can get you through any part of the year, depending on how you treat it. And, you know, it's made in a style, it's not carbonic maceration. It's not meant to be like the bubblegum side of Gamay, which is fun too, but it's meant to like be a little bit more serious and age worthy and that sort of thing. And yeah, again, like another great food wine because it's light enough that you can pair it with some lighter dishes like fish or salmon, and pork is excellent. Again, like I said, if you're looking at plant-based foods, some really earthy mushrooms or like grilled cauliflower steaks, that sort of thing would be fantastic with this as well.
So in the pairing tonight, it is so you would have had a charcuterie rose with the tomato in the middle. So if you were a meat eater, it was a salami rose, and if you were not, then it was a vegetable based rose. But for me, so the Gamay, it's a perfect charcuterie kind of wine, like assorted charcuterie. It just works. So I hope the salami worked for people.
Yep, lots of positive comments. And maybe, Yvonne, 2017, maybe you could comment in terms of cellaring this style of wine and yours in particular.
Yeah, so 2017 was a little bit of a difficult vintage in that I think we had early bud break, but then the summer was quite like kind of cool. It wasn't a super hot summer. And so the ripening was slow. But the one thing that I've learned through all these years of winemaking is that really, truly, the most important part is what happens in like September during harvest time. And it goes both ways, right? So in 2017, we had this fabulous fall. It was like Indian summer, everything ripened really nicely for us, but it still had that elegant side to it, like a cool vintage would. But I had another point here. The same goes for other years. You know, you could have a fabulous summer that's really hot and then have a harvest that's full of rain and cool nights, and that affects your vintage as well. And what I really like to remind people of when it comes to vintage, because you know, we always get these hot years and everyone's like, what's the vintage of the century? First of all, I'll say 2020 is the vintage of the century, okay? I never say this, but it is, because it was fabulous all around. But we are a cool climate growing region. So sometimes those really hot years are not necessarily what we need, right? They're great if you're growing Cab Sauv and some heavier reds. Oftentimes the reds are great, but those reds, depending on where your vineyard is, can still be great in cooler years. And for the most part, some of the aromatic whites and Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, and even Syrah are fabulous in cool years. So I always hate to like be like, oh, this vintage is really good and this isn't, because every vintage really brings its own sort of points to it, and there's things that are really good about it. And you know, 2009, for example, was probably the year that we struggled the most in Ontario, I think, with winemaking, because it was such a cool vintage. But I have Chardonnay and Pinot Noir in my cellar, and Riesling, and like some fabulous wines that have just aged so well from that year. So I think you've got to kind of look at the big picture, realize that we are a cool climate growing region, and that what we grow here is we're growing it for that reason. And yeah, so 2017, I think usually those years tend to age actually better sometimes than the really hot years, because they have a little bit of a higher acidity and they have more kind of to give to the wine to stand a little bit longer. So like tasting this tonight, I think we still have at least a few years left in it. And it depends on how you like your wines, obviously. As wines age, you get less and less of that fruit and more of those tertiary flavors, like the savory herbs and the mushrooms and the spices and those sorts of things come more forefront. So it really depends. There's no right and wrong on how you age your wines necessarily. It's what you like ultimately. And so if you like that lighter, fresher, fruitier style of Gamay, then I would say, you know, it's probably best right now or in the next year or two. And if you want to see how funky it gets over the years, then leave it in your cellar for like 5 years and see what happens. Because I bet it'll be really interesting then too.
It's great. And now
Awesome.
the next one you've got is Red Tractor Cab Franc, which Yvonne is the rock star of Red Tractor lines at the winery.
Okay.
Yes, she is the girl here. Yep, this is her line.
So first of all, the obvious question is, why is it called Red Tractor?
We have a red tractor.
Yeah, we have a red tractor at the winery, and it doesn't really run anymore, but it's kind of just become this like statue, if you will, in our vineyard. And really what it represents for us is the hard work that happens in the vineyard. And, you know, winemakers often get a lot of praise in wine, and we forget about the grower sometimes. And ultimately, you can't have a really good wine without a really good grower and somebody that really cares about their grapes. So that's kind of the premise behind the Red Tractor brand. And it's also, you know, a little bit of like power. I think you'll find that all the Red Tractor wines have a little bit of oomph behind them. And I think I come with a little bit of oomph too.
I think that's your personality, Yvonne.
Yeah. I don't know if it's me or the grapes or how this happens, but that's definitely part of this brand from Creekside. And the Cabernet Franc is a single vineyard wine. It comes from the Sir Luca family vineyard. And we stumbled upon this vineyard one year when we were looking for some more reds to bring in, and it was available. And like Ralph Sir Luca that runs the vineyard is just incredible. Like, you know, he would be saying, oh, I'm gonna cut some fruit off to make sure that it's ripe enough. And we're like, what? Because sometimes like when it's not your own vineyard and you're getting it from someone else, sometimes you have to push a grower and say like, no, we need to cut this back to make a good wine, because not all growers necessarily understand the you know, what you're looking for as a winemaker. On the other hand, they're paid by the ton, so they also have, you know, the monetary motivation of, you know, more grapes is better for them. So we had this grower that was like vintage to vintage, understanding his vineyard and saying like, okay, you know, this year I think I got to take a little bit more off. And we're like, yeah, but this is amazing. And so just incredible fruit coming off the site. And it's in the Virgil area, which seems to be a really good spot for Cabernet Franc in this region for certain styles. And so we ended up like drafting up a contract with this guy, because we're like, okay, we're not letting these grapes go another year to somebody else. So we want to lock you in. So we have Merlot and Cabernet Sauvignon that comes from him as well. But
it's big fruit.
It is big fruit.
Big,
you know, there's
lush.
different styles of Cabernet Franc that come, and I find like the bench tends to be a little bit more on the elegant side of Cabernet Franc. And as you get more towards like Niagara on the Lake, it's a little bit of a bigger style, which is what this is. This is aged in a combination actually of, it's mostly French, but this is the one variety that we find really works well with American oak and a little bit of Hungarian oak as well. And it often, like when we do just like any of our blends and reserves, we taste barrel by barrel blind. And often we find that more and more of those barrels get into the final blend. In fact, I just put 2019 Cabernet Franc together today. And there was a couple of American oak barrels that went into that. So 2018 was quite a cool vintage, I would say, for Niagara. But I think it shows like some real nice ripeness in this wine. And there is like Cabernet Franc compared to other red varieties brings other flavors to the table, right? Like pyrazine, so the capsicum or pepper, if you will, comes to the table, and some more savory herbs like bay leaf and sage come out to play. And it's a little bit more of like an herbal red than other ones. And so I find there's a real, there's people that love Cab Franc, and there's some people that are like, I don't know. So it's, you know, anyone, I don't disagree if anyone is not a Cabernet Franc fan, but for me, I really love it because I love that savory side to it. And I love
Very savory. Yeah.
Yeah. And I really love cooking with things that are savory and pairing it with stuff like that. My dad always made oxtail soup. So it's like the one thing that I really love to make. I know Nancy's giving me the eyes like, what? And when we were kids, he would just tell us it was beef, and we're like, oh, this is great. But as an adult, I came to be like, okay, I appreciate this. This is amazing. And that thyme and that savory edge to it. Like I just love those sorts of things. Yeah. So I like the other sort of notes that Cabernet Franc brings to the table.
It's beautiful.
It's not just fruit. And it's these wines, because we've been making this single vineyard wine for quite a while now. And these age really, really, really well. Like you could put this in your cellar for a decade, and I would bet that it's probably fantastic 10 years later, because it's got so much tannin, it's got so much weight to it that I think it would hold up.
Yeah, it's great. So we can talk about Iconoblast, because that's a really nice little line, because you had the Sauv Sem, and then because Syrah is our other flagship, we were the first to plant Syrah in Niagara, I think probably Ontario, right, Yvonne? We were the pioneers in Syrah in Niagara, where Rob, our head winemaker, was told we would never plant it. It would never.
Because it is unusual.
Ontario. And it's our #1 red. It wins the most awards for us. Broken Press was named one of the top 10 iconic wines in Canada. I'll let Yvonne take over with the tasting with this Syrah. It's a lovely single vineyard Syrah.
Yeah, this is one of my personal favorite wines that I drink quite regularly. It's gotten me through 2 mat leaves, so yeah. It really, I was like, okay, when's another case coming? But yeah, so we focus on Syrah, which not a lot of people do. And to me, like, it's really good Syrah. And a lot of people think that it takes a lot to ripen Syrah. It doesn't necessarily. We harvest it around the same time as Merlot, or just after Merlot. So it doesn't take as long as something like Cabernet Sauvignon. So most years, even in cooler years, it does really well at our vineyard site. This is from St. David's Bench appellation. And this is one of the warmest sites in Niagara. And that makes a big difference too when it comes to where you plant stuff. Because we used to have Syrah planted at our Creekside vineyard, and it never really did that well. It did in certain years, but it was never as fantastic as the Syrah that we have at St. David's. So as far as Niagara wines and Ontario wines go, place is really important about where you're growing your grapes. It is cold weather sensitive. So those years that we get, you know, the -22 type temperatures, that's when, you know, it's risky to be hanging your hat on Syrah. And we've had some losses, but usually not too much vine loss. It's, you know, fruit loss for a year or two where you don't get as much as you normally would. Nancy mentioned our broken press Syrah, and if you aren't familiar with that wine, that is Syrah that we co-ferment with the sort of juicy skins from Viognier, which is a white grape. And it's a very small amount, but it has a big impact on the wine. It kind of lends violets to the nose, I find. The texture to the wine as well, because Viognier is a very textural white wine, kind of an oily texture.
Silky.
And a bit of apricot. So the Iconoblast Syrah is basically treated exactly the same way as our broken press, but it's barrels that weren't chosen for broken press. And broken press is one of our highest reserve wines. It's a wine that we expect to, you know, age for a decade or so. And we're very picky and choosy about that. And the iconoclast style of the Syrah that we choose for this is meant to be more of something that you can drink now, although I would say it's still a fairly big wine, and usually is better at this stage to be decanted or given some air a little bit or had with some nice protein to kind of balance it out. But you can age this in your cellar, again, probably for another 7 to 10 years, and it would be fine. But that's why I like it so much, because it's, I think, $25, and the value on it and the winemaking that goes into it is incredible. And I really enjoy this, and this is a much more approachable style to drink on a more regular basis and to have. And I love Syrah so much. I love working with it because it has like some really nice red fruit, sometimes dark fruit. There's usually always a nice pepper side to it, and then different vintages, it's either black pepper or white pepper. And also there's a meatiness to it, like kind of a gaminess or a smoked meat edge to it. It's got a little bit of funk to it. And that's what I love about Syrah, because it's got so many different things going on and a really, really interesting grape to work with.
Yeah. So in the New World, we used to call it Shiraz when we first launched it, because that's what the New World called it. But because we make it in the French style of winemaking, we decided probably about 8 or 9 years ago to change it, because people, we were trying to educate people that yes, it's Shiraz, but we're making it in a French style with French oak, et cetera, that we would change it to what it truly is, which is a Syrah. So it's the same grape, but it's a French winemaking style.
So you know what? Very, very interesting that you say that, because I had a conversation with an Ontario winery, the Winemaker, a number of years ago, and I tasted their wine, and it was a Syrah, Shiraz, whatever. And I said, "You're calling this Shiraz, but it tastes like a Syrah. Why are you calling it a Shiraz?" And they said to me,
Yeah,
the LCBO says we should call it Shiraz because it will sell better.
right.
Even though we
Sometimes
know
we have to do that for
it's the
ourselves.
style. So anyway, so I'm very, very sensitive to whether you call it Syrah or Shiraz. And I think the marketing angle from the LCBO, first of all, is ignorance. And because you underestimate the clientele.
Well, if you notice their tags, they say Shiraz. Oh, sorry.
Have they changed it to Shiraz / Syrah?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So this is 5 years ago, but so they've learned. But seriously, I had people wanting to call their wine Syrah and changed it to Shiraz for the LCBO.
Sure, because
I think that's disgusting. Sorry.
Well, it's too bad because this style is French, which means it's,
of course,
it's more
elegant. It's a softer, it's a different
yes.
flavor. And also
it's not big black pepper and a punch of oak in your face.
But the important thing is, from a consumer perspective, if you call your wine Syrah, I know what to expect. If you call it Shiraz, I know what to expect. If you change that up for marketing reasons, you mess
Well,
up the system.
I wish everyone was like you guys, but they're not.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
we definitely see it the same way too. Like, I want people to pick up our Syrah knowing that it's in a Syrah style, because
That's right.
it's not going to be anything like an Australian Shiraz. But there
And
was a
you
time
shouldn't, and if you call it Shiraz, they're going to pick it up and
be disappointed.
be disappointed.
Yeah. And I think it was, that was around the time when Australian Shiraz was really popular.
Yeah.
And the LCBO doesn't look at, the more intricate parts of buyers,
Yep.
right? They just look at very broad statistics. And so, yes, in the broader scheme of things, Shiraz is very popular.
Right.
But the
so
people
just
that are
call it
buying
Shiraz and you'll
Yellowtail
sell more.
and other Australian Shiraz and those types of styles, and I mean, there's some fabulous Australian Shiraz. I shouldn't put it in that way. I just mean that it's a very different style. And if you were to pick up this thinking that you're going to get a Shiraz, you would probably be disappointed because it's not that style of wine. And the LCBO doesn't look at the broader picture.
Yeah.
And if you want your wines in the LCBO, there are certain things that you have to do, and they do.
I know.
And
Don't get me started, and it's probably a good time to end.
Yes.
Okay. We'll say goodnight.
So there are a couple of questions.
Time for another day, but if ever you want to get me started, it's like, hey. Anyway, folks, it's like awesome to have you guys here tonight. Nice wines.
Thank you.
I hope everybody's had a good time. And Marilyn, are there any other questions or things that have come through the chat box or comments or anything else before we
I think it's
can move on?
I think it's too political to toss around that LCBO football in our experience.
I know.
There hasn't been a winemaker yet that hasn't got an opinion on that. But I wanted to ask Yvonne, if not the number one question after, oh my God, why is your Cab Franc so delicious, isn't what's with the shape of the bottle? So can you help us to understand what led to the shape of this wine bottle?
Yeah, so I'm actually going to be honest in this context, and we've had different labels for Red Tractor because it's been around for a while, and they really wanted to do a revamp on it and make it stand out more, and they were specifically pitching it to vintages at the LCBO, and so they went with the shape bottle, and it's pure marketing. It's not a winemaking decision for the bottle, but in fact, as a winemaker, I will tell you this is awful because reverse taper bottles like this on the bottling line fall over, and it's a nightmare to bottle, but it really did make an impact for us on the shelves, and people really seem to gravitate towards it. So on that regard, I'll be like, okay, fine. But I do have to staff an extra person on the bottling line to stop the bottles from falling over. So from my perspective, it's a pain, but I understand, there's always a bit of a divide between marketing and winemaking, and you have to meet somewhere in the middle for it all to come together, because both things are equally important. And that's kind of a game that goes back and forth in this industry. So, but yeah, to be honest, there's no like purpose behind the shape of the bottle other than the look. And we thought that it helped sort of represent that powerful sort of look to it. Maybe it's kind of short and squat. You can't see me in person, but I'm quite short. So maybe it works with me. I don't know.
I know.
You're taller than me by a half an inch.
You might be
Anyway.
the only one, Nancy.
But I think it's, you know what? So I'm going to go on to the next slide, but I think it's interesting to actually have a mini discussion about the difference between like production and marketing. Like,
Yes.
and it is interesting.
Well, we come together, right? From two different
Yeah, and you have
perspectives.
to come together. We all do.
Because
Anyway,
both are
but it's
important,
interesting, and sometimes the clash is good because it's anyway. I'm going.
Well, I don't
the next
get to
slide.
live every day with Yvonne, and she doesn't get to live in my world.
Right.
And so it's wonderful when we can share. So the other thing I wanted to mention was we put in a certificate for free tastings at the winery when we can taste. We sell from the winery, but we can't taste from the winery. So please know that you're welcome anytime when we start to reopen. Please come. Use Yvonne's name. Tell her she sent you.
and everybody got a coupon in their bag, certificate in the bag, which is awesome. Yeah.
Feel free if you ever do stop by to ask for me. I'm happy to come and meet you and taste with you because I love people and I love getting out of the cellar sometimes and drinking wine, honestly. So if you do ever come by, feel free to ask for me. If I'm around, I'll come up.
Okay. And folks, just mention you're from the Burlington Wine Club.
Right. Yeah.
Hopefully you'll come out. Okay. So Nancy and Yvonne, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We really
Nancy,
love
you're always a joy when you come out. And Yvonne, this was delightful. Really.
Thank you so much.
Anytime you would like to come out, we'd be happy to have you.
Oh, you're such a great club. We just love it. Thank you for having us.
You know what? It's a good group of people, I think.
They're a great group of people. I wish I could meet them. And well, we did one live. So maybe we can look forward to another live.
So we did live for 5 years before we went virtual. So we will be live again. But
and then I can meet you in person, all you wonderful people.
Marilyn, co-host, always my right-hand person in everything.
Yes.
So, and the food and wine kits, oh my goodness, Kathy, Lorraine, Carl, Ann, Marilyn, there's a whole bunch of people that put together all the food that go with this. And in these times, it's really tricky because I don't know. We have people sitting outside until the rain pours and comes in. And anyway, it's just, it's a bizarre time to be working as a group. Anyway, it's bizarre. So Kathy, Lorraine, Carl, Ann, Marilyn, and Dorothy in spirit. She couldn't be here. Anyway, and wine buyers. So let us know if there's any more wine that you want. Any of the wines that we've had tonight that you want, we probably have a few left from the ones we ordered. And if not, of course, we can order more. So if you want some wine, let us know. Coming up, for sure, May 28th, Carlo Estates Gourmet Vegan. That's the next wine club. Let me know about the charcuterie board. I've heard back from a few people that this might be a go. So let me know if that's something you're interested in. If you're interested in a pickup at a restaurant dinner or another chef dinner, Maggie, Mike, they do dinners. We can do this. And lastly, I'll say, so we've had a couple of people that have donated things over the last while, and Mother's Day is coming up. So the Dancing Llama chocolate, for anybody that was at Maggie's, the Spring Fling dinner, she put a free chocolate thing in the bags. If you liked it and you want to order some for Mother's Day, the Dancing Llama chocolate. And if you don't remember the name or you don't take a picture of it, just let me know. Anyway, beautiful chocolate packages, and it's local. So if you're looking for something for Mother's Day, also charcuterie me in Burlington, regular charcuterie packages or Vietnamese packages. They came to one of our sites, and I've certainly ordered from them a number of times. Anyway, if you're looking for things, look local. That's it for me.
I've actually been around people for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and I feel this burst of adrenaline. People, human beings. Oh my God. Days.
Oh, I love it. Even virtually, eh? Because, yeah, good.
Even virtually, it's better than the alternative.
Everybody take care. Be
Yeah,
safe.
take care.
Thank you, everyone, for all your
Thank
efforts.
you so much, Creekside people.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing everyone in person.
That
Yeah.
was fun.
Yeah.
We'll get there. Stay safe.
We will.
Shan.
Thanks, Teresa.
Thanks, everyone.
You're very
Have a
welcome.
great night. Have a great weekend.
Great evening.
Thank you. Love your Nassau background. For you all. Flower children as well.
Clone children?
What?
Flower.
Oh, there must be Lola and Vanessa.
Phone children?
Phone
The
children?
cat's name. Our cat's name is Winnie.
Oh, sorry.
Ciao.